You're a fool.
Welcome, everybody, to the Racing Foolz podcast, powered by Low Budget TV and brought to you by Crown Performance. Today is a very special podcast because today is the 25th anniversary of the Scott Irvan Chevrolet Craftsman 200 at Saugus Speedway, the biggest race that Saugus Speedway ever held right before it closed. So we have a very special guest as well. He's a two-time West Series champion, as well as one of the original drivers in the NASCAR Truck Series. So please welcome Bill Sedgwick to the Racing Foolz podcast. Welcome, Bill.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Pretty neat to have you on here, Bill, because, you know, Jeffrey and I, we grew up watching you, whether you like to hear that or not. You know, we've watched you from as soon as we can remember to even today in the ARCA Menard Series West, and crewing for Team Sunrise Ford and Bob Bruncati, and pretty neat history that you've laid in on the West Coast, and it's a pleasure to have you. I know Jeffrey, one of my memories was interviewing Bill out at Irwindale Speedway after he won a spec truck race. And, you know, just to further prove that this is a guy that does not stop. He's constantly racing, mentally, physically, and all the above.
That's true. It's been quite a journey. We started in '79 at Saugus Speedway, so it's been, quite a journey.
Well, Bill, I'm curious to maybe talk a little bit about that start. First off, whatever got you involved in it, and really, who helped you get going at Saugus Speedway back in '79?
And probably 5 years before '79, I was messing around with a drag car that I would tow to the drag strip, Irwindale Speedway, Orange County, and all those drag strips. And it got to be where you'd spend a whole day there and maybe make 4 runs because everybody had their mom and pop's cars they want to make a pass, which I don't blame them. But when you brought a real drag car to there, it was kind of annoying. So a buddy of mine took me to Saugus Speedway late '78 as my first stock car race, and while I was there, I went and got a set of rules for the street stock class, and found a car that was up in the Hollywood Hills, actually a horse stable up there. It was a '64 GTO. It had been crashed, but it was a perfect race car. I paid $50 for it. It had an engine in it.
Yeah. Love those prices, man.
I wish I had the car.
I know.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I took it over to Sonny Penton, where Kenny Bozay and Bill Morton worked, and I paid them $350 to put a roll cage in it for me. And it was a little odd because I had painted the car before I put the cage in, so that was a little odd to start with right out of the gate. But the car looked so bad, I just decided to paint it. Anyway, I got to be friends with Ken Bozay and Bill Morton and those guys, and they helped me get going. We went out to Saugus with my nice shiny car and practicing. Everything's nice, and I qualified, I believe 15th out of 30 some car. They used to run C mains there all the time. There were so many cars.
Jeez.
It was pretty crazy. And we actually raced every Saturday night. The only Saturday night we didn't race was when they had the Saugus 330, which is a big open comp modified race. But to run for points, you had to run the figure 8 also. So I made a deal with Kenny Bozay. He would help me get the car prepared, and I'd let him run the figure 8, and I'd run the ovals. Well, my first race, I finished 7th, and I thought to myself, I can do better than that. And I've been saying that for 40 years now. So whenever I go to a race, I just my thinking, I can do better than that. So I come home and work hard and figure out what I can do to make things better and go on. But I finished 7th in the first race, and Kenny Bozay finished 7th in the figure 8, and we just had a good time. It was just a lot of fun, racing every weekend. Then I built a sportsman car to run the 2-barrel class. I built it myself with the help, of Kenny Bozay and their shop and stuff. But I did the roll cage and the motors and everything myself. And had a little success in that, and that was pretty fun. Then I thought I would want to go farther up the ladder, which I'd only been racing for 2-3 years. Anyway, I had a chance to buy a Grand National car for $4,000, I think it was. So we got some friends together, put together a motor, and went to Ontario Motor Speedway. Boy, was I dumb. But I made the show. I qualified 23rd and finished 19th out of 35 cars, I think it was. So
that's incredible. And that kind of proves that back then, so much different from today when you could just build it, race it, come out to the races, try to qualify, make it in the show. But I got to ask, so were you just too chicken to run the figure eight?
No, I wanted to run the figure eight, but the deal was that well, I mean, yeah, I guess I was a little nervous to start with, but I mean,
I would be.
I wanted to do it, and he eventually got another ride, and so I ran. In order to win the championship, you had to run the figure eight and the oval to gain points for the championship. So I was the figure eight oval champion in '83. I won the championship there. But I remember every figure eight race sitting there in the back straightaway, backstretch, outside the racetrack, lining up to go out there and thinking, what the heck am I doing? I lost my mind.
Yeah.
And then, but the thing is, once you get going, you just go. And I won quite a few races. I won the championship. I had to win that figure eight race. Rodney Peacher was a long time street stock racer there, and I battled him pretty. That was one of his really good years that he had. I kind of feel bad, looking back on it for beating him. But anyway, but I enjoyed it. I liked the figure eight. I could split two cars with a car and a half between them.
Jeez, yeah, you guys are a special breed, figure eight racers. And I would talk to people when Jeffrey and I, when we take low budget TV to Bakersfield, when we take it sometimes even farther away, one of the things that people always talk about when they ask, where are you from? And we mentioned near Saugus Speedway. And so many people would say, how great of a racetrack that was and how difficult it was to drive. But a lot of people also said that they would sometimes, literally for 4th of July weekend, they would come for the fireworks and for the figure eights, and the special late model or sportsman racing that night didn't mean a thing. That's when they'd go get their beer and nachos. And then, because the figure eights were, like you said, big fields and just intense battles. So
it really was. I mean, in Saugus Speedway, that was a family outing. It was the same people in the stands, pretty much every weekend. It was just, that's where people went on Saturday nights. So the stands were always full. It was just an event, something to do on the weekends, Saturday night. So it was fun to be a part of that. Those are some of my fondest memories, actually, is racing in Saugus.
Absolutely.
Learning and just having a lot of fun. I've done a lot of stuff, but those are some of my fondest memories, really.
Mm-hmm.
So when you started driving at Saugus, obviously Saugus is, if not the tightest, one of the tightest tracks anyone's ever going to race at. Was that something that you picked up pretty easily, or is that something that you kind of had to work at to get good at?
No, I mean, I had to work at it. Like you said, I started in '79. I didn't win the championship till '83. I was actually driving somebody else's car, Dennis Johnson's car. But I had to work at it. I mean, I finished second, a couple of times. There was a time when I had my Sportsman two-barrel car and the street stock, and I held the track records. I've got some programs here somewhere that show that I had the track records in both divisions, which was pretty cool. So.
Absolutely. Jeffrey, do you have anything more about the start?
As far as the start goes, so you spent years at Saugus Speedway, and like you said, you went from the street stocks, worked your way to sportsman. With that Grand National car though, and that experience, how did that start to take off? Because obviously you were doing like the Saugus stuff, but it looks like, just kind of looking through your record, that from time to time you do traveling, you would do some Grand National races. So for back then, before really the Grand National stuff took off for you, were you doing a lot of traveling, hitting up other tracks around Southern California?
No, not really. I went down to Ascot, Hornaday, and I went down to, well, he spent more time down there than I did, but we went down and raced at Ascot one time on the little the dirt track down there, just to to go out and do something. But that was really the only other place. I didn't start going to Mesa Marin until the Southwest Tour stuff. We got involved in that with Spears, and then we raced a few Southwest Tour races. But other than that, I didn't go around that much. I know Pat Minty. I drove his car one time at Mesa Marin. I think I finished fifth. That's a long time ago, but I think I got the opportunity to drive somebody else's car. The engine in my car would always blow up. It just
You're a drag racer.
We didn't really know what we were doing, and I finished the race at Ontario, the first one. Then we went to Riverside to try to make that race. We missed that race by a car or two, and so it was a struggle, and Roman Kalzinski is a guy that I used to race with through the ranks, street stock and sportsman at Saugus, and he ended up going to drive for Spears in I think '86 or so, and then in '87 they hired me to come be his crew chief. I had sold a Grand National car that I'd built because I built another car later on that I ran at Willow Springs when we had a race there, and a couple of different places tried to run it, but always had troubles. And I ended up selling it to him, and I came to be the crew chief for Roman Kalzinski. We won the championship, I think, in '88, I think it is. Finished. So it was just off to the races after that.
So go ahead, Charlie.
I got to ask before we move to your Spears deal. You said you went to Riverside. Obviously, the three of us, I think we all missed. We didn't get to go to Riverside. We've always heard about it. Give us your take on that racetrack because you actually drove on it.
It was great. The way the S's were. You would actually almost cut through the dirt to straighten the S's out going up there. I'd been there a few times testing, and then obviously trying to race, but I never actually got to race there. But I got a lot of test time and trying to practice times to try to make the race. But the thing is the Cup cars were there, and so the West and like the Winston Western 500 or whatever, that was part of the West schedule. So we were kind of field fielders for those guys because a lot of them didn't come out here, to race on the West Coast that much. So it was tough. It was a really fun place. Back straightaway was pretty eye opening. It was pretty fast going through the dog leg, and it was pretty intimidating for me not knowing anything about road racing. So
I bet, absolutely. Were you ever trying to be a Bill Elliott, Sterling Marlin NASCAR Cup Series driver? Were you working your way up the ranks into the Cup Series, or were you just trying to see wherever you went? Not at all.
I was content and happy with just racing Saugus Speedway, having a good time, and I was a auto mechanic, garage mechanic, at the time. So I'd already been working on cars, and that was my job. And stock car racing it was drag racing, and then stock car racing ended up being my hobby. So I was just content doing that. I had no aspirations whatsoever to go, move up the ranks. I mean, when opportunity arose, I took advantage of it, but that wasn't really a goal of mine. I just enjoyed doing what I was doing.
Based off of our short conversation we've had so far, you have not had it easy. Based off of the names that you've mentioned, I mean, if the Southwest had a Hall of Fame, Kalzinski, all these big names were the guys that you were battling with almost every Saturday night, and you got to look back and give us your perspective on that competition level, battling with the Hornadays, the Third Kettles, Kalzinski, and Press and Prosser and everybody else.
Yeah, Jimmy Inslow. Jimmy Inslow drove Ray Hooper Jr.'s car one time over there, and I couldn't get by him, but I mean, I was giving him a mirror full with my, home built car versus his Jackson, fabrication chassis car that he was running. So I felt good. I felt good about building my own stuff and competing with, regular jig built, race cars that people were buying.
Mm-hmm.
So it was fun. It's a peace of mind for me. It's some kind of an accomplishment. Makes you feel good.
Right, absolutely. So you mentioned the Spears, Wayne and Connie Spears. Where were you? What was everything like? Obviously, you were the crew chief for Kalzinski. When did you get the nod to jump behind the wheel of one of their race cars?
Roman was a good friend. He was a good driver. They were looking. Larry Woodside was actually his crew chief, I think, at the time, and Wayne was looking to make a change, and so I'd sold him the Grand National car that I built. It was actually a 87 Buick Regal, and he wanted to go, West racing with Roman. So we did that. He hired me, and we did that. We did that for a year, and Roman seemed to adapt. He was better. He was a lot better in the tour cars. The bigger cars they rolled around a lot. They were just different than a tour car. A tour car is more like a slot car, type of driving car, just really precise. And he was just really so good at that. And anyway, we were sitting around one weekend, and it was an off weekend, and Spears had 3 or 4 cars sitting there. He had an old Dave Fuge car that nobody liked, and the engine builder said, "We ought to load this thing up and take it to Saugus Speedway." We were just messing around on a Saturday morning, I think, doing something, and so we put a gear in it and loaded it up and took it down there. Of course, we didn't tell Roman about that, and as it turned out, I think I won the trophy dash, and I won the main event with beat Dan Press, and he's actually flattened my left rear tire on the last lap, but I still managed to get to the start finish line before he did, and we won that. We just had a really good time, and of course, Spears was happy, and you could see that I could drive a little bit. So they had decided in '88 to give me a chance to run the car. Actually, '89. I'm sorry, '89, because that was my rookie year. In '88, we ran the car a little bit with Roman and the Southwest Tour, and we won the Southwest Tour Championship. And Wayne decided to move on and give me the opportunity to drive the car. It was a sour thing between Roman and I, but it wasn't. I wasn't out to get his job. It just kind of worked out that way, and it's something I always kind of felt bad about, but because I feel like he feels like he got done wrong, but it worked out good for me, and I was happy just working there and crew chiefing, because I like the engineering part of stock car racing, personally.
Jeffrey, Charlie?
Well, I guess we could just continue with the Spears. Right. So like you took over the ride, and just talk about your time running that car.
It was really a lot of fun, and it's funny because Roman was so good in the tour cars, and I would run a few tour races here and there. We ran a couple of cars a couple of times, and he was always better than I was. I just wasn't as good in the tour cars. I was sloppy. I guess you'd say I was too sloppy for those cars. So I would get away with sloppiness in the bigger, heavier cars, the West and West cars at the time. So it's I don't know, I just felt at home there, and I really enjoyed it. We ran for the championship in '89. I won my first race. I had to move Herschel McGriff out of the way, so that was kind of cool at Madeira Speedway. It was fun. I started off really rough. I would racing at Saugus, we had 30-lap races, and most of the time in the early days they inverted the whole field. So if you were going to win, you had to pass one car every lap, at least. So that was my racing mentality. I gotta go. You gotta make it happen, or it's not going to happen. But I was racing in 150 and 200 lap races, and I just needed to settle down. I was a bull in the china shop, really. When I first started out, and I didn't make a lot of friends, but I moved Herschel a little subtly out of the way to win my first race there. It was pretty cool. And I think I was the first rookie in the series to win, I think, 3 races in the rookie year, which was kind of cool also. just it was just a lot of fun racing with a lot of different people.
So, Herschel McGriff obviously is like a legend, and you're racing a lot of West Coast legends. Did it dawn on you that, you're able to basically run and beat these guys, or were you sort of just too busy just doing it to really appreciate what you were accomplishing?
I was very intimidated, and I remember Leon Ruther was my crew chief, and I remember he told me, he says, these guys all put their pants on one leg at a time. I said, okay, well, yeah, I guess so, but there's still, still Jimmy Inslow, it's still Third Kettle, it's still, Herschel McGriff and Bill Schmidt and these guys. So, I mean, I had a lot of respect for those guys, and, it was tough, but when you talk to Herschel, he tells a funny story, because Leon Ruther was, before I had gone to work for Spears, Leon Ruther was working for Herschel McGriff when he had the Mark C. Bloom sponsorship, and I would work on the car, and I'd go to the racetrack and help, and so, sometimes I would jack the car or do whatever we needed to do on the pit stops. And Herschel laughs about it this day, and he says, I didn't know Bill was checking out everything we were doing here so he could come out someday and beat me. So,
yeah.
But it's funny story to hear him talk about that, because I did work on his car for a year or two, and then ended up driving and racing against him. So we had a lot of good times. We had a lot of respect for each other.
Absolutely. So you go and you start off pretty good in the 89 season. Then you go on to deliver Wayne and Connie 2 championships in 91 and 92. Were those just dominant seasons as the stat shows, or were they ups and downs?
They were ups and downs. We started off, kind of rough, engines blowing up and stuff like that. I mean, I missed the championship in my rookie year by, I think, 30 or 40 points or something like that, which wasn't terrible. And then I lost the championship to Bill Schmidt on the last race at Phoenix Raceway by 1 point in 90. So, I mean, I was there. I was in the hunt. Just sometimes the chips didn't fall. And how it turned out, Bill Schmidt and I were racing each other, and if one would pit, one would stay out. If the other would pit, the other would stay out. So it came down that we had there was a caution, and I pitted, and he stayed out, and the race didn't get to. It was probably, I'd say 10 or maybe 15 or 20 laps to go, and I got back up behind him, but I couldn't get by him, on the last lap that I needed to get by him, and I should have, and so I ended up losing the championship by 1 point. So that was kind of a little frustrating, but at the same time, I was. It means more to me to be competitive and be in the hunt than to actually, win. It's, you could run in the back of the pack and win a race, but what does that mean?
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, typically drivers obviously only care about dominating by 4 laps, but I think that kind of shows the competitiveness, but also what you just referenced a little bit ago. You like to be involved with everything, not just the results, but as far as building, maintaining, the engineering aspect, and just being, in the hunt the whole race. Jeffrey?
So, just going back through this, 1989 to 1992 in the West Series, you guys get 2 championships. I think I count here 12 wins. Was there ever conversation about you guys doing anything different, or just, hey, as long as things are good, we're not going to, fix what ain't broke. We'll stay here in the West Series. Did you guys ever maybe talk about moving up even further, or were you pretty content?
I think in 90 or 91 seasons, we towed our car. Our cars were the same as Cup cars. The same. We worked out of the same rule book. Mm-hmm. We towed back to North Wilkesboro and to Martinsville Speedway. So I qualified for the Haynes 500 back there, and we ran that race. We had a problem with the distributor or whatever, which we fixed, put us a lot of laps down, but we ended up, we finished the race. But we went there 2 weeks ahead of time, and we were testing, and at that time I was running Penske shocks, and I was building my own shocks and stuff. But a lot of the Cup guys were still running Bilstein shocks. Well, the Penske shocks were a lot better on the Martinsville Speedway with the concrete and the roughness and everything. We tested 2 weeks earlier, and I was the fastest car with Sterling Marlin, Mark Martin, Richard Petty, and there was somebody else there, and I was the fastest car through testing. And we ended up doing something to the car, and I made first day qualifying. They used to qualify, 2 different days back there. The first 20 or 25 would lock in, on Fridays qualifying, I think it was. And then the second half of the field would get filled, on Saturdays by second round qualifying. But we made first round qualifying, which was a pretty good accomplishment. And so that was pretty cool, to do something like that. I didn't know anything about the big 1.5 mile tracks. Never really felt comfortable on those type of tracks. Phoenix is pretty much my limit. I mean, we ran in the trucks, we ran good at the Milwaukee Mile and some of those places, but I just cut my teeth on these little bull rings, and that's where I was comfortable. I felt like, I can feel the car on those bigger racetracks. The car kind of drives you some, with the air and stuff like that. So I just was never really comfortable with that.
That's, very interesting, being that later on you had to race a lot on those racetracks.
Yep.
Charlie, Jeffrey?
I guess when you move ahead a little bit to the later years that you're running the West Series, I was seeing some names like Rick Corelli all of a sudden popping up, and then Hornaday was in there. So just talk about racing against those guys, which you would end up being racing against a lot later on, but we'll get to that later. But just talk about, racing against like the Rick Corellis and Ron Hornadays.
So we won the championship in 91 and 92. In 93, we didn't do quite as well as we'd done the previous years. I won 2 Motorcraft 500s up in Washington. There were 500 lap races. The first one I won took 5.5 hours in the car, which was something.
Geez.
And I beat Bill Elliott to win that one, and then the next one I'd beaten Sterling Marlin, which both those guys were clearly faster than the rest of us all race long. But we had a long run there. Sterling Marlin burned his tires down, and I passed him for the win. And those races, paid really good too. It was $50,000 a win back then.
Ooh, wow.
But, that was kind of an accomplishment. In 93, Corelli came into the picture with more competition, and we just kind of fell flat in 93. In 94, Wayne decided to put Ron Hornaday in the car, which was good. I was the crew chief, and we went out there and tried to battle for the championship. We missed the championship by a few points. He finished second. Mike Chase ended up beating him. And then, of course, the Truck Series was starting up after that. So after the 94 season, and I was crew chief, and Hornaday for the winter heat races were coming around about that time. And I want to say it was probably the last race. It was January or whenever it was. The 94 season was over. Anyway, Hornaday came to drive the Chase, that the car that Mike Chase, won the championship in, and so Spears put me back in the car, knowing we were going to run trucks in 95, and I was going to get an opportunity to drive again. But anyway, Hornaday and I battled each other, pretty hard through that winter heat race, and I ended up getting by him on the last lap, and it was pretty cool because I think Buddy Baker made a comment that made a big deal about me being a crew chief for Hornaday and then beating him in the race, which
Yeah.
I'd been racing before that already anyway. But we took the ball and ran with it. It was cool. But I remember he said, "Folks, that was a Hornaday move used on Hornaday." It was pretty cool on the TV thing. And Ron's a good friend. I had a lot of respect for him. I'm so proud of what he's accomplished, in his career and so many races that he's won. It's pretty awesome just to know him and be friends with him.
So let's backtrack a little before that point. When did you first hear about the Truck Series? And when you heard that this was going to become a reality, what were your thoughts on it?
I thought it was a little weird. I don't know, what people are thinking. I thought they kind of lost their minds, but but it was an opportunity. The Truck Series was created to run, most of the short tracks across America, and it didn't end up being that way, but it did in the first year, which was pretty awesome. I went to a lot of great places. But like everything, they want to grow it bigger, and it's hard to get enough people in the stands to pay a purse for a big race like that. So ultimately, they ended up going to a lot of the bigger racetracks. You go to these big racetracks and see all these seats, even though you don't fill them up. It's just more, it's just more inviting, I guess, for people. But it was a lot of fun. But there was a lot of talk going on. Marion Collins and Gary Collins, they were kind of involved in the in the inception of the whole thing, when they first talked about it and started building some stuff. And so, Marion and Wayne Spears were good friends for a long time, and so we just thought it was something that we might try to look at and see how it goes. And it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool that it's still going. Yeah,
definitely.
But those races, I can tell you, in '95, I mean, there was a lot of champions from different series, different divisions, everywhere, and it was almost like you really raced hard in those races. I mean, every lap was almost like a qualifying lap. You just didn't, or a trophy dash. You didn't lay back and cruise like you would in a cup race for 500 miles or laps or whatever, or 200 laps. You'd kind of just settle in and race, but the truck races, they never let up either. They were just intense every lap. It's like every driver, wanted to prove himself against the next driver, and so it's just been so competitive from day one.
I know that, like, me, Tommy, and Jeffrey, we watched the Truck Series since it started, and we still watch it now, but we always have fond memories of those early years. And do you think that, obviously it's changed a lot, now they go to a lot of the speedways, now they have pit stops, the races are probably longer as well. Do you think that when you ran it, it was like the perfect formula? It was a short race with a halftime, no pit stops, pretty much solely on short tracks or a couple of road courses. Do you think that was, I mean, even though it's easy to say that the old days were better, but I mean, do you kind of think that that's true?
It was better. I totally agree. It was better. I mean, NASCAR's competing against itself with the Cup Series. You have the Xfinity Series, they have the Truck Series running on the same. I mean, how many how many people are just going to go and just watch 3 different divisions run on a racetrack like that? I mean, it's obviously good racing. The trucks put on really good races, but there's so many short tracks across America where that would just love to have those races, but it's so expensive they can't afford to have them, and it's a shame, because the Truck Series started off to be that way, be a short track traveling series, which the first year was awesome. The second year was good too, and then they just started going to these bigger and bigger racetracks, and it's all about money. The purses were higher. It's hard to pay those purses. These little, the Portland Speedways, the Saugus Speedways. It's hard for those track promoters to get enough money to have one of those races. I know Marion had a couple of them, and that's a tough nut to crack without a sponsor to help out, to get them there. It's just expensive, but it's a shame that it has to be that way. In my mind, you need, the racetracks almost need a sponsor to help cover the cost of having the series come to their track, because they're not going to make enough money off this people that are coming to the stands. They don't have enough seats. But the racing is just phenomenal, I think.
Yeah.
Talk about in that first season. I'm going to be honest, because like Tommy and Jeffrey grew up at Saugus Speedway. So they already knew who you were, and Rick Corelli and Ron Hornaday. Like, they already knew all those guys by the time the Truck Series was made. I was one of those people that I discovered you guys in the Truck Series. Like, I discovered who Mike Skinner was and who Bill Sedgwick was and Ron Hornaday when the Truck Series came out, which is probably one of the best things about the Truck Series. And it seemed like when you look at that roster from the first year, everybody that was in that series was seemingly, an established track champion from some series or from some track. And this was like their chance. And obviously, guys like Skinner and Hornaday and Sprague made it to Cup on a full-time basis eventually. Did you have the same view of the series, or were you sort of just kind of going with it and like, this is cool, and wherever it ends up for me?
Well, I really like the truck series. You know, I had no aspirations to go to Cup or anything like that. It's just, that's a whole different thing. There's just so much politics there. I don't need that. I'm a racer. I'm a Saturday night racer. I like to go race, and the truck series was way low key compared to the other two divisions. So it was the perfect scenario, and it was the perfect scenario to be able to go visit, you know, different tracks around the country, you know, little, you know, short tracks. So to me, it started off as, you know, just the perfect, you know, scenario. And I was just happy being a part of that, really, you know. And that's just, unfortunately, I got myself greedy and thought the grass was greener on the side of the fence. So I quit Spears and took a you know, a ride with Darrell Waltrip. But you know, that's we all make mistakes. That's the way it goes.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that later, because that was one of our questions.
So I'm curious, as rewinding a little bit here, Bill. I think it seems one of the biggest storylines outside of the truck series itself and the names that were coming in, almost kind of like you could call it silly season that happened just before things got going. Tell us a little bit about how you ended up in the driver's seat of the number 75 machine, because it seemed like there was a lot of moving parts before opening day.
As far as for the truck series?
Yeah.
It opened up for me because Dale Earnhardt called Ron Hornaday to drive his truck. Mm-hmm. So that left Spears without a driver. So he's like, okay, well, you know, and I hopped in the car and won a race over there. So, well, I guess he can drive still. So, so we built the trucks, and we went off, and, you know, and I was the driver again. So, I mean, it just kind of happened. If Hornaday hadn't got a call from Dale Earnhardt, Hornaday would have been driving the Spears 75 truck, and I hopefully probably would have been the crew chief.
Right.
And at what point did you find out, like, how much before the first race did you know that you were going to be driving it?
I want to say that it happened late in the '94 season when everybody was trying to, you know, put the truck programs together. Mm-hmm. I think they started off. Well, there was some exhibition races actually. I think in '94.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think we had put together a truck, and we did some stuff with Hornaday, and actually with Hornaday in the Spears car in '94, we went. You know, the West Series was invited to go to Indy. That was a thing that Dennis Huth and Ken Clapp had put together. So we actually towed back to Indy with Ron Hornaday in the Spears 75 car. We missed the show, but I can say that the Spears car was the first stock car to roll into Gasoline Alley on the actual race weekend.
Oh, wow.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
Wow.
Me and everybody, we were all in. They parked the trucks for the inaugural Brickyard 400. They parked all the haulers there, and we were there. And normally all the Cup guys unload their pit equipment and get it into the garage first. I said, heck with that. Let's be the first car to roll through Gasoline Alley.
Nice.
And we were. And it was pretty awesome. Nobody really knows that, but it was something that our team, you know, thought would be pretty cool. So we were proud, and we pushed the car through Gasoline Alley over there to the garage. So it's kind of cool.
I got to ask about that actually. Like, did you ever think in your life that I'm going to be racing at Indy Motor Speedway one day? I mean, how was that? You know, because it wasn't just you; it was probably everybody that was in that race was probably thinking yeah. Oh,
for sure. There was a lot of cars. A lot of West cars showed up. A lot of Cup cars showed up. I mean, it was a big deal. But you have to remember also, Ontario Motor Speedway was pretty much a carbon copy of Indy, and that was my first race in '80 or '81, whatever it was. So I'd already you know, had a taste of that. Of course, it's not Indy, and it's not as competitive. You know, it wasn't as competitive as Indy is, but it was still something.
You should have brought the same car.
It was an old '77 Monte Carlo. They weren't even legal by then.
Well, I'm not sure the Lumina was that much aerodynamic anyways. So, continuing on with the truck series, unless Jeffrey has anything more. Nope. Okay. So you guys are building trucks. You've got programs together. I'm sure Bill France and Collins and every other investor into the truck series are just calling you every day saying, how's it looking? How's it going? You know, we got Phoenix coming up. We got Winter Heat coming up, whatever. But when you got the schedule and you saw a lot of familiar racetracks to you, but you saw Saugus Speedway as one of the first 5 events of the season, you tell us what you how you reacted, maybe even, you know, were you just shocked? Were you surprised? Were you giddy? What was Bill thinking when Saugus was on the schedule?
Well, my wife Kay worked there already, so I already knew, you know, what they were working on as far as getting the race. So it's so I had the inside scoop. But I mean, it was a great schedule. Saugus, you know, was my home track. I won some West races there, and I just felt like I was really right at home there. I've done pretty well. As it turned out, I beat myself in that race. I finished 3rd, but I beat myself, and I can still kick myself today. In fact, I thought I was going to get fired Monday morning after the race because I was trying something. We had tested there, and we were pretty fast. But ultimately, I ended up getting beat by Ken Schrader and Jeff Bodine, which, you know, whatever. But
they were field fillers. They were. You got bushwhacked, is what you got.
Well, I mean, but I felt like I should have been faster than them, and I felt like I gave it away by. We were messing with rear sway bars at the time there, and I really liked what the rear sway bar did to the truck, as far as making it get through the corner. But unfortunately, after 40-50 laps, it was your enemy more than your friend. So and I was stuck with it. So I had to fight it out. But I mean, I finished 3rd anyway. That was cool, and I was ahead of Hornaday and Corelli and all the other Skinner and those bunch. So it was a peace of mind, but it was really disheartening, you know, not winning the race, because I really felt like I had a truck capable of winning, and so did the team, and so did Wayne and Connie Spears, and so I really got an earful Monday morning for messing around with something that wasn't proven, and rightly so. So it's I really thought I was close to getting fired Monday morning after that. So pretty humbling.
So take us back to that night, though, because obviously you'd raced there many years, and all of a sudden, Little Saugus Speedway is live on TNN for the whole. Everybody's watching, because I think it was an off weekend for Cup too. So everybody's watching this little racetrack that you'd grown up racing at. Was the atmosphere different that day, or like just you know, what was it different that day for you? You know, knowing that this is the biggest race that this track has ever had.
It was really exciting. Yes, it was. It was exciting. It was exciting to be a part of it. But there's so much focus on getting the truck right and making sure everything's right, and you're you know, you're going to be competitive. You know, it's the last thing I want to do is you know, not be competitive. So it's it was a lot of hype. It was a lot of fun. It was really exciting. You know, like you said, just being on TV right there, and it was just exciting times, really. You know, of course the series was still new, so we'd already run a couple of races before that. So, you know, I just felt like this was my chance to really shine, and I just kind of threw it away.
So I'm curious about this, Bill, because obviously you had seen Saugus Speedway, you know, with a bunch of cars in the pit area before, back when you were racing street stocks or Sportman. So this day arrives, and we've heard different sides of this story, and I'm curious, maybe from a driver perspective, or at least somebody that was in the pits all day. One thing that we've heard, and I'm going to kind of paint this picture for people. Saugus Speedway is a flat, small third-mile track. Just along its back straightaway is one of the main artery roads of the city. On the other side, you have a hill, which is right at the bottom of the hill are train tracks. So there's not a lot of expansion you could do. On the other side is the Metrolink station, and then you got the parking lot on the other side. So they only have so much space. how in the world did they fit that many haulers into the pit area of Saugus Speedway, and how compact did it feel for you guys?
Well, we weren't in the infield. We were on the outskirts, and I don't think the Metrolink station was in at the time because Saugus's back parking lot went clear down where the Metrolink station was. I'm not sure when all that came in, but the pit area was pretty good size. It was very crowded. I mean, I got to tell you that, but there was just so much hype and so much excitement. It was really something.
And of course, I use the word infield, not even thinking, right? Saugus Speedway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the truth of the matter is that when it rains, the water runs to the outside of the track there.
Right. It is, off camber racetrack.
Just a little, not a lot, but just enough. The water does runs to the outside, but
right.
I mean, to me, a bank track is. I'm not going to say easy, but it's easier than trying to get a car working on a flat racetrack like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to realize that Saugus Speedway, if the only way you were going to pass was route somebody out of the way, or you had to get your car working to work on the outside. So, through my years of racing there, if you wanted to pass, you had to pass the outside, and so that's what I really worked on. And I had to look back the other day to see where I qualified. I didn't qualify very well. I think I qualified 11th or 13th or something like that. And so I don't recall what happened there. But I mean, I had to pass trucks to get up to finish third. So.
And that's not easy to do at that track.
No. So I guess maybe I'll just have to bring up the bad news. But so after that race, you guys continue on with the racing season for the truck series, but right there in the middle of the summertime, or actually closer to the beginning of summertime, what was, I guess, being that Kay worked over at the Speedway, I can only imagine how shocked the Sedgwick household was when the door is closed forever just a couple months after their biggest event of the year. Or ever.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was, but more than that, it's unfortunately the Benellis owned the racetrack, and there was one of the Benelli brothers that was a big fan of racing, and he had passed away. A lot of people don't know the true story, but he had passed away, and the other brothers, they make money, and the swap meet that they would have on Sundays would generate a lot of revenue. And Ray Wilkins, as far as I can remember, was told that if he couldn't, bring in the revenue that the swap meet has, then they're gonna shut him down. Because you have to realize though, all this stuff happened right after the Northridge earthquake. Mm-hmm. So, not a lot of people were getting through the Newhall Pass. It was just, things were rough right there, so they weren't making money. But I can tell you that Ray Wilkins did an awesome job running that place, and it was fan friendly. He always had things going on to keep the people excited. But every year the grandstands were wooden, and mm-hmm. they were falling apart. But every year he would go and bring a contractor out and replace wood that needed to be replaced and stuff like that. But the Benellis brought somebody out and as an advisory, and to advise them, what they needed to do, and they said these things need to be tore down and rebuilt. And so the Benellis said, "I'm not spending the money to do that, so we're done. We're closing this thing down." But it's sad because the grandstand stood there for years and years.
Oh, totally. Yep.
And Ray Wilkins was always on top of keeping the grandstands, safe. It was their recommendation to tear them down, and so that was Benelli's excuse to shut the place down. Number
right.
one, it wasn't making the kind of money that they wanted to make, but nobody was, right after that earthquake, it was the 94 earthquake. They're still, trying to get through all that stuff. But Ray Wilkins did a tremendous job promoting that place and bringing the truck series there, and just his vision was pretty awesome. He's one of the best promoters I ever known.
That track, it's such an odd sight, because I know Tommy up until recently still lived out here. I still live, maybe 15 minutes away from Saugus Speedway, and whenever I'm driving through Saugus and you just see it sitting there, obviously now without grandstands. Only recently did they actually tear them down, as you mentioned. But the wall is still there. The painted lines on the track are still there. And
still says Super Truck Series painted
yep.
on the crash wall too.
Sure does. And it's so interesting because there are one thing I think Saugus did, and maybe you could kind of fill in a little bit on this from your side of it, Bill. But one thing that I'm always surprised about are people that I know aren't race fans, don't go to races or whatnot. But if they hear Saugus Speedway brought up, especially out here in Santa Clarita, they reminisce still about, I went out there because it was the place to be out here on a Saturday night. And a lot of people went even just as a, hey, that's where some people are hanging out. Let's go check it out. And people, it brought people together that I don't know if anything really has like that ever since Saugus closed down here in Santa Clarita. So, did you kind of get that feel that like Saugus, we always hear about how it was just kind of a main hub on a Saturday night?
Oh, for sure. That's why I said it was a family outing. I mean, that was the same fans came every Saturday to watch the racing. That's what they did. The stands were always full. I mean, that was people's Saturday night event, for people that like cars and stuff like that. But it was a lot of times the same people, because they would open the grandstands down and the same people would come and chat with you in the pits afterwards. And it was just a really family friendly place, as Irwindale is. Irwindale Speedway is kind of the same way right now. It's kind of the same way, but there's so many different things to do now, with for entertainment nowadays. So it's really hard.
I got one more question revolving around this truck race, just because I'm curious. Going back to it, you guys are headed to Saugus Speedway. I'm certain that some guys did their homework and knew that your name was a good one at Saugus. Did you have any notable drivers asking you for tips before you guys got to that race?
I don't really recall. I mean, Jack Sprague was a friend of mine. I think he asked about it a little bit. There was, a lot of those guys were friends of mine, and I'm sure there was questions here or there. But I mean, everybody held their cards tight to their chest about what they were going to do and stuff. So I mean, it's just so competitive. Then it just really competitive.
Jeffrey asked you if beforehand anyone asked you for advice. After the race, did you hear anybody complaining? Because we know of at least one driver that did not like the track, PJ Jones. Did you hear anybody else?
I couldn't recall any names, but there was always some people whining. It's the same old thing, though. Wherever you go, if you don't run good, you don't like the place. Or the place is junk or whatever. Saugus. It was an okay place. I'm not going to say it's a super nice place, but it was a good. It was good. It was a good place to race. We went to a lot smaller tracks. We went to Portland Speedway, which just is really old and just dirt around everywhere. But I mean, it puts on a good race. So if it's a good race, then people like it. If it's not a good race for them, then they don't like it. But Butch Miller, I mean, he
Yep.
I think he liked it. He was a short track racer, and some of these other guys. But there was a few guys that complained about it. Yeah, I remember that.
From that first year, what's a track that was on the schedule that you'd never gotten to race at before that maybe was that was fun, or that was, that's a kind of a favorite, or I'm glad I got to run that track?
There was a unique track that I enjoyed. It was Flemington.
The square.
Yeah.
The square, yeah. And it took me a while to figure out, how to drive it. But once I did, I don't remember how we finished or what we did there, but it was just interesting on how to drive a vehicle around it, let alone race car. Just it was pretty interesting, but that was pretty awesome. And then talking to the fans afterward and hearing the history of the racetrack when it was dirt and this and that, it was just that was pretty awesome.
Well, you qualified second, finished fifth, so you picked it up pretty quick.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I lost something then if I finished fifth. So.
Oh. Never satisfied.
That's a racer, though, right?
Yeah.
Hey guys, time to pay the bills. Here's a commercial.
When performance matters most, the pros trust Crown Performance. Constructed from Teflon, Kevlar, and stainless steel, Crown Performance brake lines exceed all industry standards, will hold up against the harshest conditions, and provide ultimate stopping power, whether it's for the street or the track. We offer customized sizes and colors to fit any application. Visit crownperformance.com to learn more. crownperformance.com. crownperformance.com.
So you round out the season, 1995, with a, let's see, I believe you finished in
Seventh in points.
Seventh in points. So seventh place finish in the point standing. So had an average finish of a top 10. Then you change gears, quite literally. No more Spears ride. You jump in to the 17, and I don't know how much you want to discuss or talk about.
Well, I guess talk about just how did that happen, I guess. And then we'll go from there.
So Ron Hornaday is a good friend of mine. He's driving for, it's kind of ironic how the whole thing worked out, because I was friends with Dale Earnhardt and Ron Hornaday was friends with Darrell Waltrip. And so I was, you know, when the series started, Dale, you know, pegged Ron right out of the gate from the winter heat stuff, watching him race and stuff like that, and gave him a call to come back there and drive. So I said, oh, well, that's kind of stinks because Dale's my friend.
Yeah.
Whatever. But that's okay. I get it. I mean, Hornaday's, he's always been better than me anyway when it comes to racing and a racer. So that's okay. I mean, he made a good choice. And then I felt, you know, it's one of those things where somebody thinks the grass is greener on the other side of the fence, and it's really not to you when you get there. And I felt like I was really missing out. I wanted to be a part of this, and I wanted to move forward. And I felt like, you know, being on the West Coast, we're missing out on technology, on engines and horsepower, and we're just missing out on a lot of things. And so this was kind of my mindset. At the same time, I had, with being with Spears, I had every resource, you know, at my grasp right there. There was nothing that we couldn't do. You know, Wayne always told me that our limit to what we can do is what we can think about. And I never forgot that. I said, if we can think about it, we can do it. And that was him. And but I had been with him for almost 10 years, and I just felt like, you know, stuff is slipping by, and I wanna win races, and I want to be better. And Darrell Waltrip, you know, called me up to ask me what was going on, and so I was licking my chops, and so I made the change, and it was an experience. I signed a 1-year contract with him. It was only good for 1 year, but I was hoping that we did well and we could move on. But he was just starting the truck team up at that time, and so there was one truck, and they built another truck, and so it was a startup team. But I felt like I'm on my way here now because I'm with the big time driving. I was Darrell Waltrip's first hired driver ever, so it's so, you know, it was exciting times. But looking back on it, I said that was kind of one of the more stupid things I've ever done in my life. But whatever, I made the bed, so I got to lay in it. You know, that's just the way it goes, because there was so many opportunities, you know, with Spears but you don't realize it at the time. You get caught up in this guy's doing that and that guy's doing this. So I was thinking that this was gonna be better for me, and it really wasn't. I mean, we ran okay. We had problems. You know, we blew up in the first race at Homestead, which is, you know, was upsetting, but never won a race. Still, I finished second at the Milwaukee Mile. I think it was against. Might have been Skinner or somebody, I don't know, or Sprague, one of the two. But, you know, it's one of those decisions I made that, you know, cost me. I felt like, you know, whether I would have been still driving for Spears or crew chiefing or whatever, I would have been part of a program that has the resources and the capability to be, top notch all the way, without, looking back on it. Now I realize that, but at the time, it's just kind of a mistake on my part, but it's the way it goes.
I know some people might be surprised that, it's a team Darrell Waltrip owns, it's got a sponsor. How could they be underprepared or not have the resources? I mean, how does that happen? Or
well, he has the resources, but the thing is, we're trying to put stuff together. So he had a truck that he had messed with in the '95 season. I remember racing against him at Topeka, Kansas, I think it was. But he had put together a truck to go do this because that's what Chevrolet wanted. Chevrolet wanted Richard Childress, these top teams, and Hendrick and those guys to have trucks. They didn't want them, but I mean that's what General Motors wanted and Chevrolet. So they built them, and they followed the orders.
Right.
And so then Darrell said, well, we gotta put together this program. While we were racing, they were building a shop for the trucks to be housed in, and it finally got done, I think, partway through the season or whatever. And we were hiring people and guys to come work and stuff. And he had an engine builder there. The engine builder did the racetrack. I mean, I don't mean to put him down, but the engine builder didn't go to the racetrack. He was a 5-day-a-week guy, so there was no engine tuner at the racetrack. And it was just hard. The following season they put Rich Bickle in there, and they went out and they won some races, and then they moved on with Rudiman, I think it was, and they won some more races and stuff. So they did well.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, Darrell Waltrip was, his ship was taking on water, so to say. At the same time, so it's he's trying to keep his career going and run this truck series, and that's the last thing he really needed was a truck team. When he's trying to keep his cup program going. So, but we're friends, and everything works out.
So you mentioned how a lot of these teams, and it wasn't just the Chevy teams, it was the Ford teams too, because Roush had trucks too, and so a lot of these cup teams started these truck teams, and I guess at the wishes of the OEMs. And how much support or resources or input did the OEMs have with those teams? Were you getting funding? Were you getting wind tunnel time? Were you getting engineering support? Or
there was all of that. They had an engine package that they had worked on. It was kind of a recipe engine that ran pretty well. I remember going back to the wind tunnel and watching some wind tunnel tests on what was going on. It was kind of ironic. The trucks that we drove in 95 and 96, they had 30, 40 pounds of lift on the front and 300 or 400 pounds of downforce on the back. I mean, it was just, they were, it was something that it took time to work on, and now they got them pretty good now. But I mean, they were a little bit tough to drive on, on the bigger racetracks at that time, but it was what it was. Everybody was in the same boat. But no, the manufacturers were all in. This is something that they wanted, and that's why it happened. So
I just remember at that time, I mean, it was not only the OEMs, but then also the aftermarket people were customizing truck packages to make it look like a truck series machine. So we continue on down the truck series. You look like you wrap it up in 1999, and you're back in the old familiar West Series, and you raced that for many, many years after battling for championships again, going against the new crop of the decade or two ago. Talk about those years, the late 90s, 2000s year, because that was a time where the West Series starts going from the quarter mile stock to 99 to the Mesa Marins, and then eventually you're going to Las Vegas Motor Speedway, you're going to Fontana, and And then there is going to be an exhibition race that we have to talk about before we let you go. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. But talk about competing in the West Series. You raced for people. You ran your own team. Talk about the late 90s, 2000s.
So in '96, when I came back from World Trips, I sat down and said, "Okay, now what am I gonna do, dummy? It's I can get a job, pretty much working anywhere, on any team. I'd have to move to North Carolina to do so, but I just wasn't sure what I was going to do. And Tim Buckley from Vintage Design called me. He had bought a couple of trucks and he wanted to go truck racing, but he was right, fresh out of go-karts, and so he had never really been in a stock car before, but it was something he wanted to do. So we went out and we went out and tested. We went to El Cajon, we went to Tucson, and we went to some of these places and tested and tried to get them up to speed. But it was, it's so competitive. It's just hard for somebody with no stock car experience to come in and do. So I went to Tucson with him, and I think we missed the race, and we came back, and he says, "Well, why don't we put you in the truck?" And so I said, "Well, we can do that, but we got to do this and this and this." And so we did some of that stuff, and we ended up not qualifying for a few races, and we qualified for a race, I think at I-70, and something happened. I don't remember what it was. I think one day cut my tire down or something like that. But anyway, we just kind of struggled, and so then I told him, I said, "Well, if you want to get experience, you need to either get a late model or maybe a West car or something like that." So we ended up buying a West car or a Cup car from Darrell Waltrip, and we put it all together for him to try, and we still really weren't up to speed yet, and so I ended up running the West car for him, and I don't know if it was 99 or 98, 99, something like that. And I did that with him for a few years, and then went to Japan with a guy that just put together a car and tried to run the race in Japan. It ended up being in the rain over there, but we were pretty fast, and I think I don't know if we had engine problems or whatever we had over there, but came back, and then Mike Duncan called me up and wanted to know if I'd be interested in crew chief in his car, and I said, "Well, we'll talk about it," and made a deal, and we won a couple of championships.
Sure did. So Japan, where were you? When did you get the letter? Did you get an email? Did you think that you had fallen and hit your head really hard when you got the notice to say, "We got a race, but it's overseas. Send it in the shipping container"? What was going through your mind?
It was something that NASCAR was working on, and there was a guy that I knew that had a car, and he wanted me to drive it. I think I drove it a couple of times for him out here in some different select West races or whatever. I think probably Vegas and Altamont or something like that. And I said, "Yeah, let's go. Sounds like it might be fun." So we got on a plane and went to Japan.
So
had to been a little odd, jumping on the plane while the car is already 2 weeks ahead, over the ocean somewhere.
Yeah, it was. But I mean, we were at the Motegi road course there, or Suzuka road course. Anyway, it's started raining, so it's like, okay, this is different. And then so we had rain tires, and so I had to change the car all around. And oddly enough, we went out there, and I want to say I was like 5th or 6th fast in practice. It was going okay. Of course, when the race came, it was sunny out, and I don't recall what happened to us, but I know we didn't finish the race.
So
it was actually sorry,
yeah.
Charlie.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
No, Ben, I was just gonna say it's kind of funny looking at the results of that race. Obviously, with the setup and West cars going out and whatnot, but I mean, Saugus, speaking of Saugus, it was pretty well represented there. Bill, you were there. Hornaday, Woodside, there were drivers that had that Saugus connection that went out there. So I guess they just knew who to go for. Lance Hooper was out there. So pretty interesting.
Well, I think we were involved, or most of us or some of us were involved with the West Series at the time. So they were not everybody wanted to go, so they were looking for people to go, and I'm like, well, I'll go, I'll sign up. So got to bring Kay with me. We had a good time over there, so it was fun.
How were the fans over there? From what I remember, because this was like, we were kids when it happened, and I think at the time I was too young to really either appreciate or recognize how unbelievably odd it was. But I hear that the fans were very receptive and welcoming, and they were very excited about it. Is that what you recall as well?
Yes, they were. They were very excited, and they were so excited. And those people, at that time, I'm sure they still do, have so much honor. Everyone bows to one another when they meet, through cross paths or whatever. They're just very respectful. Yeah, I've never seen so many people with so much honor before in my life, and they were just so happy, and the kids waving their little stuff. They were just they're really excited to see NASCAR. It was really something else.
Nice.
One more question about the circuit. So you got to race Riverside, you got to race Indy, now you got to race Suzuka. Talk about that track, because that track's one of the most iconic tracks in the world.
It was hard to figure out because we had to practice in the rain. I don't recall getting much time at all, in the dry track, and so it was tough. It was tough, remembering. There's so many corners, just remembering which turn and where it went, and there was just, the whole thing's, a blur by now. But it was a challenge, and I'm always up for a challenge at least once.
Right. Yeah. So then it looks like you on my stat sheet, you wrap up your West Series driving career in 2001. Then we kind of fast forward a bit to current day and your involvement with Brancati Motorsports, Sunrise Ford Racing. How did that come about for you?
So obviously, my wife handles the radios for NASCAR and the Southwest Tour at the time through Performance Radios, and so we were at Roseville Speedway, which is the first track. Mike Duncan, couldn't do it anymore. It was just time to quit, and money spending and stuff like that. So I went to the racetrack in support of her, and Brancati was there with Jason Bowles. He had ran the previous year, I believe, because I think he won a couple of road course races or something. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so I was just there helping Kay and hanging out and seeing my friends at the racetrack, and Jason Bowles found out that I was there, and he came over. His crew chief didn't show up, so he pretty much had quit. And so
Dang.
Jason came over there and got me, and I went over there and didn't guys, but introduced myself and got to know him a little bit. And the car is going through tech, and NASCAR has a problem with the car because there's a bunch of stuff that's not legal on the car. Yikes. So with we changed a couple of things, and I made a deal with the NASCAR officials. I've been friends with all those guys for a long time, and they know that I'm not trying to beat them, or beat them down or get something by them, which just you got to respect them, and I do. So I made a deal with one of the guys that I would change a few things on the car to make it how they wanted it to be, and they said okay, because they pretty much wanted them to load it up at that time, and I said okay, we'll do that. And so he went out and practiced and wasn't very good, and so we made a change. He went out, he got a little bit better, and made another change and got better, and I think he ended up sitting on the pole, and they were Brancati, and everybody was just so ecstatic, and through the whole thing. And so on the drive home, Bob Brancati called me up and said, "What's it going to take for you to come to work for me?" I said, "Well, let me come down and see your operation, see what you got going." I didn't commit right then. I just wanted to make sure that I like to search things out before I make a decision. I didn't want to make a quit Spears and go work for Waltrip, decision again. I knew that was a poor decision. So I just tried to think things through. And so I went down and talked to him, and we just hit it off really well. And as it turns out, he says that he was trying to hire me for years before that, at the time. So I got to say that he's one of the best bosses I've ever worked for. He's right in there with you, supporting you, and I've got 4 full-time guys that work with me down there, and we get along well. And he lets me, run the team. He runs the team, but he lets me, manage it how I see fit, and I set up all the cars there, and pretty much do what I want to do, pretty much like it was with Mike Duncan and at Spears, the same way at Spears. I made a lot of the decisions, that had to be okayed through the boss, and it's worked out well, and we've won quite a few races as a race team now. I've been with him for 11, 12 years, something like that now. It's been great. He enjoys the sport. He enjoys helping these young drivers that don't have any money behind them, and if he thinks they can drive and he likes them, he'll give them an opportunity for a year or two to drive the car, and with hopes that they move on. And we won the championship with Jason Bowles, and he moved on and ran some Xfinity stuff. But not these days, if you don't have a big checkbook in your wallet, then it's
the ride gets shorter.
Yeah.
It's just tough because there's so many people out there that have talent. It's I worked with Jeff Gordon's little cousin, James Bickford, and he just had so much talent and so much going for him, and just could never really get past the money part of it, as far as getting an opportunity with somebody. It's the sport's just so money driven nowadays. It's just tough. So I really admire people like Bob who enjoy racing, and they can afford to do it themselves, and give these other kids a chance.
When Jeff Gordon's cousin can't get funding, that's pretty eye-opening.
Well, I mean, I feel like Jeff could have stuck his neck out a little bit to help him out, but it never really happened. It's unfortunate for him. He's working now, still wishing, he calls me now and then, still trying to work on stuff to get going, and then I had PJ Jones's son in the car a year ago, and he did a great job, just a great job, and he's got a lot of talent, and needs to move on too. But it's one of those things without funding. We've been trying to get Ford to do something with him and back him, because we really like him a lot, Jagger Jones. So it's just a lot of talent.
That's another name that, like, if he can't get funding, that says a lot too. I kind of wanted to maybe connect. So, like, when the Truck Series first started, and you and Ron and Jack and Corelli and all you guys got, like, that opportunity that it sounds like a lot of these kids just aren't. And if all you guys were racing 25 years later, would you guys, like, how different would Ron Hornaday's career have been if he had to come today with, would he not have gotten his chance either?
If it was this day and age, unfortunately, probably not. Because there's a lot of guys out there that are, as good as Hornaday was back then, but it just everything's so expensive and so money driven nowadays. It's really hard. It's the big break came because the manufacturers were pushing the Truck Series. So there was a lot of rides out there with no drivers, and so the teams would pick champions from other divisions, or people had success in other divisions. So it was almost like a floodgate opening up for the Truck Series. But now everything's settled down, and now you need to bring some money if you want to drive one of these top trucks. It's just really hard.
So what we got to do, Bill, is we need to talk NASCAR into opening up their fourth tier division, the minivan series.
There you go. Yeah, that's it. That's it. I don't know. To me, NASCAR, they don't have a, road racing is something that people really enjoy, and NASCAR, doesn't really have a nationwide road racing series. To me, that would be, an avenue for them. Another thing that I like is this Roval idea thing where you build a small road course in some of these half-mile stadiums like Irwindale or whatever, and make the cars go through the infield and come back out. That's exciting.
And to circle back to your career, they should do a doubleheader to where they run the oval at Irwindale and then the Roval, and you can't win a championship unless you run both.
Or figure eight.
Or figure eight. Run the ARCA West Series in a figure eight. Bill, I am out of questions. The only thing I want to add to your illustrious racing career is that you can thank me in 2018 when I marched on over to Sunrise Ford and bought you guys a few tires and some cans of gas with a used car. So when Derek Thorne won when Derek Thorne won his second title, I know what he said at the championship banquet. He didn't thank me, but I know he meant to. And obviously, it's okay. It's fine. I know he meant to. So
well, Derek Thorne, we didn't even bring him up, but he's I have to say he's probably one of the best racers I've ever known, as far as, managing a race. He knows how to manage a race. Not anybody, but a lot of people can get in a race car and make it go fast for a few laps. But he's the only guy that I really know that knows how to race. And, we had won a champion. He and I butt heads, for a year or two, but we got the job done and we won the first championship. And then Bob decided to, give some more rookies a chance. Well, people weren't calling to rent Bob's car anymore. He wanted to at least rent one out, and then he would fund the other one with a rookie, And it wasn't working that way because we were struggling. It seemed like we'd always have two rookies, and just really weren't going anywhere. So we sat down with Bob and I said, you know what, we need to re-solidify Sunrise Ford Racing by putting a couple of veterans in here. So I asked Derek to come back, and we got Ryan Partridge, and we went out and won races and finished 1-2 in the championship. And I said, all right, that pretty much solidifies our team right there.
Right.
And then we went back off on the rookie thing. But I have to give Derek so much credit. He knows what he needs in a race car, and he can drive anything. It's just amazing to me. It's sad to me that he hasn't gotten the opportunity, because I feel like he's ever as good as Kevin Harvick or Ron Hornaday or any of these other guys. There's a guy that hasn't really got a chance, and he's older now and having a family, but there's a guy that can really get it done. So it's a good friend of mine.
Awesome. That's all I got.
I guess I got kind of a wrap-up question, and it's more of, I guess, just looking into the future a bit and current. Unfortunately, right now, a lot of us are stuck at home because of the coronavirus, COVID-19, and obviously it's affected your guys' race schedule with the West Series right now on hold, just like any other sport out there. Are things just kind of shut down with the shop, just kind of waiting, or is there homework being done in the background? Like what does it look like for you West guys, and has NASCAR told you anything yet about how maybe things are going to look for the future as far as this season goes?
No, they're still trying to figure that out. And then I'm hearing that the officials are talking about not allowing any sporting events till 2022. So I'm not sure how this is going to play.
Yeah.
Bob Brancotti came into the shop, when all this happened, and says, you guys can stay home. He says, I'll pay you for as long as I can. And I says, well, Bob, we got work to do. So if you don't mind, we're coming to work. And so we're in the shop getting our road race cars finished up. There was some, a lot of updates from last year to this year. So we're finishing up some of that stuff. And Bob's got a couple of hot rods that he'd love to get, some projects that have been going on for 7 and 8 years now. So we're working on that stuff for him. And we're not going to take his money and not give him work. So, that's how myself and my guys that work for me feel, and so that's what we're doing right now. We're just chugging away in the race shop, hoping we get to go race one day.
When you said road race cars, were those ARCA road race cars?
Yes.
Okay.
for Sonoma
Utah?
and Miller Motorsports Park.
Yeah.
When we changed to the ARCA program, there was a few rule changes that we had to do with the cars, so we're just pretty much getting everything updated.
Gotcha. One thing I forgot to ask earlier, because you mentioned that you and Dale Earnhardt were friends even before the Truck Series started. How did you know Dale?
I knew Dale and Rusty Wallace and a lot of those guys from racing, the West Coast. Phoenix and Sears Point were Cup races, but they were also West races. So I would either be first or second in the points, and so when they lined the cars up in the garage, it would go Cup point leader, West point leader, and so on, and they would intermix the West cars, right through the field with the Cup cars. So at that time, I got to know, Dale, and Kirk Shelmerdine was his crew chief at the time. We became really good friends, and Rusty Wallace, and just a lot of those guys, from just hanging around. So
that's cool.
It was pretty cool. And I remember going to College Station for the first time as a 2-mile track. Hornaday and I were both there, and neither one of us cared for it too much, but he he adapted and got it going. But I remember Dale Earnhardt was one of the Cup drivers that was come to they probably paid him to come and bring fans and stuff, so he raced with us. But I remember walking through the garage and him coming up behind me and grabbing me behind the shoulders, shake you like he used to do all the time. But he just became a pretty good friend.
That's cool. And yeah, to College Station, that's the old Texas World Speedway. So yep. I hear that's actually it's either getting torn down or it's been torn down. So that's kind of a shame about that. But
yeah, it's too bad. It was a really good speedway. I went there and I didn't run very well, and I ended up putting Ron Esau in my car just because he had good experience on those big tracks like that. And so to get myself better, about a few weeks later, I went back to a driving school there when David Starr's, I want to say his cousin ran a driving school there, and David Starr helped coach me and some other guys, and I ended up going faster in the school car than I did my own race car.
I guess one last question. I'm sorry, you're probably starving. Did you have anything involvement? Were you even competing in the Australian NASCAR race?
No.
Okay,
I didn't do any of that.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, that's it for me.
Yeah. You good, Jeffrey?
All good.
Well, thanks again, Bill, for joining us. I mean, it was a cool trip, not only down memory lane, but just to honestly just learn more about your career. Like I said, I personally, I didn't know who you were until the Truck Series. So obviously there was a lot before and after, a lot of blanks to fill. So, it's cool to learn about one of the, not only just original Truck Series drivers, but I mean, Tommy told me 30 minutes before we got you on the line that you were from Granada Hills. And I'm like, how did I not? Because that's my hometown, and I'm very prideful about that. So I knew Don Perdome was from there. Yep. MK Kenke, the Bostrom Brothers, championship motorcycle racers. I had no idea that you were from Granada Hills. So you learn something every day, and that's really cool to learn. So
yeah, I was there for a little while. Yep.
So
and yeah, Bill, I guess just to kind of add to it, I know that sooner than later, hopefully, we'll be seeing you at a racetrack. But just want to reiterate for all the fans, all the racing fans out here in Southern California, and I know Tommy and Charlie would share in this, but just for the years of entertainment and what you did on the racetrack, whether you were behind the wheel or on the cart. Thank you for it, and thanks for putting on a show all these years and continuing to do so.
Well, thank you guys. I've just got to say that I've been very blessed over the years, more blessings than I deserve. I got a good family, and racing's been good to me, and what can I say? Just very blessed.
All right, Bill. Thank you for your time. Good chat as always, and we will see you later at a racetrack.
All right. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much.
See you,
Thank you, Bill.
Take care.
pretty cool interview.
Yeah,
he's
super nice guy.
I can see
Yeah.
Bill's in there, and he's probably listening. But no, dang it, there he went. There he went. Dang. He's going to pop back
What
in.
you should have said was, before he hung up, we should have been like, all right, scrap that one.
Yeah, redo.
No, super nice guy, man.
Yeah.
Just
And so one of the fun stories, one of my memorable stories, Jeffrey and I, we were, this is at the start of when we kind of started announcing at Irwindale Speedway. For some dumb reason, we accepted to take the pit road interview job at a West race. And
Oh, wow. I forgot about that.
yeah, and I think you and I had the pleasure of both interviewing Bill Sedgwick, whose driver, I believe Jason Bowles, was leading the race. And
Wait, did we both, when you say we both interviewed him?
yeah, it was because we were in the infield, and during the halfway break, we couldn't hear each other through the speakers in the infield. So I think Jeffrey went over to interview the front row, or Jason Bowles or whoever. I don't remember who was driving, but Bill Sedgwick was the crew chief of the leading car. Jeffrey interviews him, then goes to 5th, 10th, whatever. I'm working the other side of pit road, and Jeffrey and I had blown through most of the interviews that we were supposed to do, and we were just filling time. And I had worked my way to the front side of pit road, and he had already worked his way to the back side of pit road, and I was scrambling now. I was just like, well, we got to fill time, and Jeffrey and I aren't supposed to talk about the race. We're supposed to interview. So I go to Bill Sedgwick and interview him. And later on is when I realized that Jeffrey had already interviewed him. Because people were like, oh, good to hear from Bill Sedgwick twice. And I was like, what? And then Jeffrey then realized, wait, you interviewed Bill? And that's when I realized, wait, you interviewed Bill? And yeah, Bill was, he didn't bother to say a word that, this has already been done. Go find someone else. You're in my way.
Maybe he thought like I was for the track, you're for MRN or something. Who knows?
But yeah, no. But Bill and his wife Kay, they're just two sweetheart people. And Bill's one of those guys where I feel like some people might think like, man, what's he doing? What's on his mind? Is he mad at me? Something going on? No, it's just he's focused. But you go to Bill and you strike up a conversation and you'll get the gold that we just got out of him, because he has no problem talking and interacting with people. He's just, like he mentioned, he's so focused. He's so focused, driven on everything.
He's a racer.
I'm sure Kay, his wife, probably catches him staring at the wall more often than not. Not because he's bored, but because he's thinking of what to do better next time.
How to go faster. Yeah.
Yep.
So, we chatted with Bill, obviously, but I want to get your guys' take on what you guys remember from 25 years ago at Saugus at the truck race.
Oh, man. Tommy, you want to go first?
Well, I definitely remember. It's fun because I actually put your picture up on the Fans of Saugus Speedway Facebook page, and I asked people what do they remember, and the reason why is because if I see anything fun on here, I could share.
How's the reception
talking about the event? 64 likes and
to give you perspective, Jeffrey, I posted a photo of the ticket stub from the event. So,
and I have my ticket stub still.
Yeah,
sitting. Yep.
We have 31 comments on here, but obviously my earliest memory of that event was getting there before the sun was out. Waiting in line with Jeffrey's dad because we were waiting to get tickets and we didn't know if it was going to be a sellout. So I think we got there at like 5:30, maybe even 6 in the morning, and just waited till the ticket windows opened at 8 or so, and then we went up to our seat, laid the blanket down, and they were practicing. And they practiced. I got in trouble for opening up the commemorative Truck Series diecast. So much so that my mom had to go buy another one, so then I could play with the one that I already opened and save the other one for later. And then I remember walking around with Jeffrey and his dad around the track. We watched some practice on the back straightaway, and I remember Jeffrey's dad pointing out that the truck's left front tire lifted up off the ground, and I didn't know what he meant at first until he made me pay attention. and interesting, funny enough, to hear from a driver, Bill Sedgwick, who talked about how they needed to play with the rear sway bar to get the trucks to flex like that. And then the race started, and again, electricity, full grandstands, most packed we've ever. That was probably the one night I've ever spent at Saugus Speedway, not under the grandstands. And the race went on. I couldn't tell you if it was hot or cold. I couldn't tell you that the race was great or not because I just don't remember. But then, obviously, looking back at the YouTube videos now and stuff, pretty cool to see. Again, I feel like, or at least me, I was too young to even appreciate what was going on. We didn't know that the track was going to close in 2 months. Yeah. We didn't know that the truck series was going to be what it is today. It was just another day at the races. It was a special day, but we went to Saugus that Saturday. No different from the week before or the week after.
Was it one of those things that you guys just assumed, oh, okay, that was cool, we'll see them again next year?
Well, because the Southwest Tour would come to town, and the West Series would come to town, and I don't remember that either. But I just remember the hype where, okay, we got touring drivers, we got the pros in town, and then the next week TK Carvasic was running figure eights with a skeleton car, and the train races were happening, and demo derby, and things that go bump in the night, and street stocks and everything. All that stuff was just a normal thing. But when you're 3, 4, 5 years old, it's just another day at the races. Pretty incredible to see that, and it's also incredibly a bummer to see that two months later. Yeah, how Saugus Speedway ended up shutting down. And Jeffrey, what was your memories?
I remember how weird it was the early morning. I remember weird parts of the day. I remember at one point going back to my dad's truck, which was parked on the side of the street, because they had their parking, and my dad was always very particular. He always parked his truck along the back straightaway up against the bushes that were up there. And I just remember going there midday and thinking, this is weird because it's midday. I remember at one point during the event, probably early in the day, maybe even before we got there, a friend of my dad's was able to get his hands on a pit pass. And I remember them saying, oh yeah, Jeffrey can go in the pits. Well, then they found out, there's actually an age restriction for that. So no, I was not able to go in the pits. But I don't even remember who it was, but there was an older, I was gonna say older kid, probably was 18, but was able to go into the pits, or maybe 16 or whatever the age was, and had a camera, and they're like, we'll take a bunch of pictures for you. So I actually have a bunch of these pictures from the pit area during the day, in one of my photo books somewhere in the garage, of all the buzzing and how tight the pit spaces were, as we talked about with Bill a little bit. But from my perspective, what I remember feeling at that event, like Tommy said, was the electricity, was the energy. Although we were young, I remembered knowing that this was a big deal. This was something else. This was gonna be on TV, and even though the series was so new at that point, this was gonna be the series' third official race. There was so much excitement around the trucks at least with our group, that I remembered how exciting it was before we ever even got things going. And I remember how packed it was at Saugus that day. And as it went into the night watching the race, I remember kind of our reception of there was a weird thing that happened during the race where PJ Jones got taken out, and I don't know, and Tommy, I don't know if you remember this, but I remembered at least in our group, and I told this to Charlie like about a week ago, is that race fans were very, very, or still are, very territorial with the racetracks. Mm-hmm. You do not put the racetracks down. And so either the track must have interviewed PJ, or they had audio from maybe radio was probably there or something. For some reason we heard the interview, we must have, where PJ was less than flattering about, oh, this is no racetrack, you can't do anything on it. And because I remembered like our group being like, oh, boo.
Right.
Because at one point he was just driving around the track. There was a bad oil down on this track at one point. I remember that. Mm-hmm. Probably more than one. Obviously, like to put it out there, we've bumped into PJ since then. He and his family, of course, Jagger Jones, that we've seen growing up at Irwindale, and hope to see him back in a race car sooner than later. It just really supportive of the short track side of things, and obviously, so that was a back in the day thing where right. I just remember it though. It's vivid. It's there. But yeah, I remember it being a big deal. Charlie, you were asking about like, was the mindset kind of like, oh, can't wait for this next year? And I'm pretty sure it was. I think we saw it as, wow, this is a cool addition to the Saugus Speedway schedule. Nobody knew what was coming. What's weird is I don't even remember really well finding out that Saugus Speedway closed. I don't know if you do, Tommy.
No.
Because for me, my dad, our group would occasionally already go to a track out in Bakersfield, California, known as Mesa Moran, which was a half-mile asphalt track that shut down. What is it, about 15 years ago, and for that track, like that just became the next track.
We just moved over to there.
Yeah.
I mean, one weekend we were at Saugus, then it shut down midweek, then we went to Mesa Moran. But blended right over.
Yeah. I will tell you this, Charlie, and this is one of those weird memories that I have from a very early age is. When I used to go to Saugus Speedway, when I was very, very young, like I went, I only just recently confirmed this because I've been transferring family tapes, but I went to Saugus before I ever turned 1. So I used to say 2 is when I started going to Saugus, and I was wrong. I've been going there literally my whole life. And for me though, I wouldn't stay for the races. I would go there during the day. And then my mom would pick me up just around sunset. And I was thinking like, hey, that was another cool day at Saugus Speedway. Not realizing that there was the whole reason you go is the part that I was missing. And I remember though, my mom would always make me macaroni and cheese. And I would eat that macaroni and cheese. And I could hear, because we lived in Canyon Country, maybe 10 minutes away from the track, I could hear the race cars echoing in the valley, in the Santa Clarita Valley. I could hear it. And I just remember to ask my mom, like, so when's Dad coming home? I heard. And then at some point, I'm pretty sure it was Tommy spilled the beans and was like, so why do you leave early? And I was probably like, what do you mean early? Like, it's time to go get mac and cheese. And you're like, you do know you're missing the races, right? And that was probably the day where I went, oh, hell.
That was Jeffrey's Truman Show realization when he ran his boat into the wall and he realized right then and there, wait, my whole life's been a lie.
Yeah. So that's, yeah. So, I mean, Saugus, my memories again, and this could be a whole additional segment just about Saugus Speedway, but like I remember sitting in the stands once I figured out my mac and cheese dilemma. My dad and I would go to McDonald's before the race. I would get a Happy Meal, no pickles, and I'd be sitting up there eating. I mean, we could probably literally do a whole podcast just us reminiscing.
Right.
I remember the time I accidentally called 911 at Saugus Speedway. Like, there's a whole bunch of good stuff.
I lost a Richard Petty car We crashed one of your Hot Wheels. I sat in nachos and then sat on someone else's lap immediately after.
We spent just as much time under the grandstands than we did above the grandstands.
Yeah, Bill Coleman's mom would bring a hammer and nails with her in a purse. And so, like, whenever you'd walk to your seats, which was in turn 4 for us, like, at random, you would just hear someone hammering a nail into the wood. And it would just be her just kind of doing generic maintenance on the grandstands with a seat around her, because the nail would kind of start sticking up a little bit and loosening up, and out came the hammer from her purse, and she would, tap it back in, and
No big deal. Yeah.
just went along with the races. So,
And I guess one last story that does come to mind for me from the truck race in particular, and I kind of alluded to this a little bit asking Bill about it. When the trucks got to Saugus Speedway, and this isn't, I didn't witness this, but this is something that's been a long time story. And Tommy, I think you've heard this one too. Apparently, there was nobody to deal with the haulers when the trucks got to the track, allegedly, because a friend of ours who was in our group, Donnie, apparently had to help direct the trucks off of the street into the pits. You've heard the story, right, Tom?
Yeah. In fact, it was even today, if you go to Saugus Speedway / swap meet, looks can be deceiving, because you drive by the track and there it is to your right, and there's the entrance. And the entrance had a sign, "Welcome to Saugus Speedway," or whatever the case may be. Now, the next driveway looks like the Metrolink, the public train entrance. So you would, at that point, realize, oh, crap, I got to make a U-turn on Soledad, the main street. Like, there's no U-turn. There's no U-turn available. And
I don't know where they would have turned around.
And so I think actually the case was that, if I remember right, during us waiting in line for tickets, trucks and haulers, it's a one-day show. They came in the morning and they pack up and leave. So trucks were actually pulling into the general parking entrance, to which I think, our family friend Donnie was like, no, you got to back it up. So he helped back the truck out of this narrow entranceway, 53-foot pickup truck, 53-foot semi-truck, back out onto Soledad Road, and basically direct everybody to the second driveway. So I don't know how Donnie got his ticket, but he was in. So I'm sure he got picked up by one of the crew guys at that point. He might have been even racing in the event. So
he was out there directing traffic.
It's that event, and that, like, those are the stories that we're all probably missing today, that you can wish in one hand and do the other, and then in the other, or hang on, that sounded weird, didn't it? You can wish in one hand and take a in the other, to see which one comes first. We're not going to see, I don't think, things can change, I doubt it, we're not going to see the trucks ever go back to these little bull rings ever again. But these are the stories what made the truck series how they are today. And one of the most recognizable divisions that all NASCAR fans love. And yeah, like Bill said, I fully agree. The early days were the best days. The truck series is still great today, but you'll never see what we all lived ever again in that truck series, which is just so great that it was actually somewhat able to be documented on national networks and available on YouTube and stuff now.
Yeah. I mean, the entire 1995 season is on YouTube. You can watch the entirety, and that's, again, like you said, it was, I mean, I'm sure there's so many people that we could probably pull on this podcast just to talk about the series and how it got going, because it really was just almost weird. It's like, oh, hey, like, that was unheard of. Where there's a new NASCAR division. It's like, what? Not just new NASCAR division, completely different vehicles. So, yeah, it was pretty cool that, we got to enjoy it at Saugus. And, that might be the other thing, just to kind of finish up my point on it, about like how we felt about the trucks is while we were excited about Saugus, we also, the following week, we were at Mesa Moran for the truck race.
Oh.
Right.
And
So,
3 weeks before, we saw Ron Hornaday win in Tucson live. And then a few weeks before that, or maybe even 1 week, I don't remember, Mike Skinner won a Phoenix.
It was
February.
like 2 months before.
Okay, well, yeah. See, you'd watched the series more than I did. But basically, going into Saugus and Mesa Marin at that point, we had seen that series on TV. We knew what we were going to expect. And it was just pretty cool that the train, funny way to put it, but the train went by through our hometown and went on to bigger and better things later. So we also, another cool story is Jeffrey and I and our family, we watched we were there for the exhibition races, Saugus, Mesa Marin. So we kind of got that firsthand perspective. It's kind of sad to look right now, at least in the last few years, actually, that the birth state of the truck series doesn't even have a race, which is pretty interesting, but just not the case. Just not in the cards, I guess.
Hopefully one day again, at least Fontana, or Sonoma, or something, or hell, Irwindale, then. But
yep, so many good tracks out there that can be run. I think Orange Show would be good too.
Yeah, that'd be like a throwback.
But see, we can't have Orange Show because it would then ruin the history book of Saugus being
the smallest track. Yeah, it was interesting for me. So this, you guys grew up at the Speedway. So that truck race was actually my first and only time going to the Speedway. And I just remember knowing about the truck series coming and just begging my dad to take me. And normally my dad would always say, next year or next time. Well, I'm very glad that he didn't wait till next year because there was no next year. So, and the thing for me is that was only the second motorsport event I'd ever gone to. The first one was Monster Trucks at Anaheim Stadium in '94. So this is the first real race I'd ever gone to. It was the first time I'd ever been to a short track. There's a lot of firsts here. First, it was a big deal for me. I mean, that's why I always remember this event fondly because, it probably did have a big influence on kind of where I ended up today, So, but the thing is, since I'd never been to Saugus before, I couldn't compare it to other Saugus events because I didn't know any better. I didn't know that you didn't always have TV cameras, and I didn't know that, the lights and all the packed grandstands. I think I just thought well, it's like this every week, right? So I didn't know the difference, But
well, Charlie, I'm just glad that you were able to witness, to my knowledge, the all-time slowest average speed race of the truck series ever.
Well, it might be the slowest race ever in any touring division, right?
Right. It could be
43 miles per hour.
And I just didn't know better. I mean, for me, it was I'd never been at a race that was that loud for that long. I mean, it was. I always remember it,
I mean, it's crazy to think that your first NASCAR experience was at Saugus, and there's people whose first was at Auto Club Speedway, Daytona, Indy, and like you said, that's all you ever know until you go again.
Yeah, which about that, but
right.
So it's always going to be a very fond memory. I'm bummed that I had photos from that race that I don't know where they went. I don't think they got thrown away, but they're just lost somewhere in my house. But I mean, they weren't the greatest photos because they're through that white chain link fence. But still, I mean, I wish I had them. But nevertheless, it's a moment I always remember, and I'm glad I got to go. And it's cool that all three of us were actually there,
right?
Because we all have different perspectives of that event. I do remember going with my dad. It had to be during the week because nobody was there yet to get tickets. And I do remember looking at the track and wondering because the pits were not in the middle, but I was always used to seeing on TV short tracks with pits in the middle, or any track with pits in the middle. So I was like, where are they pitting? And I had no idea about the concept of outside pits and exiting the track to pit and then re-entering. So I remember during the race, I forget which guy it was. I don't know if it was Glanville or somebody some poor guy, might have been Kerry Teague, I don't know, but they were stuck on that pit exit for like 4 laps trying to merge onto the track, and they just never could find an opening. So I remember that happening. I don't remember PJ Jones getting dumped, but I do remember Skinner leading like most of the laps, and then something happened, and all of a sudden he wasn't leading, and then Ken Schrader won. So I was like, oh, okay. But
and I think that was Larry McReynolds' inaugural TV.
If it wasn't inaugural, it was one of his first.
It had to have been, because that was Easter weekend. Ernie Irvan and the Cup drivers were all off. Childress was in the pits with Skinner, and man, what a time.
So one thing that was funny though, and you guys might get a laugh out of this because you guys knew the deal and I didn't. And so after the truck race, and remember, like, this is the first time anybody in my family had been to Saugus, our only time, you know? So we didn't know there was like a whole schedule of stuff. We went for the truck race. The truck race ran and finished, and we were leaving. And I remember reading in the program, like, train racing and things going bump in the night. And I was kind of wondering as we were leaving, like, why is nobody else leaving yet? And then I asked my dad, like, hey, you know, like, should we, is it still going? He's like, no, we're going. We're like, we're done. Like, he was like
200 was enough for him.
He was like, yeah, we're going. So, and then I didn't learn till later, like, no, there was other stuff.
Yeah.
But we just,
so I wanted to point that out, because on my thread on Facebook with your ticket stub photo, one of the things that I was curious of too, and then I just found out right now, was that a racer in the modified division, John Watkinson, which Jeff and I know very well, he said that he raced in the modifieds right after that event. And he said, my God. In that comment, he basically says that at the beginning of their modified race, at the end of the truck race, the rubber marbles were the size of golf balls. And they had to forge through that. And then who knows, there probably was a figure 8 race of some sort afterwards. So I always wondered that too, because I always wondered if it was just a one race event and then everybody goes to Saugus Cafe afterwards.
Well, for my dad, it was a one race event.
Right. So no, it sounded like they did have local racing afterwards. I also watched through the race a little bit today, and I didn't realize how cold it was. It was supposed to dip. It apparently dipped down to the low 40s that night. So
I was probably too excited to really.
I don't think anybody cared. Yeah.
Well, and another thing some people might not realize. Apparently, the broadcast itself had an issue.
Oh yeah, the power. Their power went out.
Oh,
the truck, the TV truck. Yeah. So
I just wonder, like, those that were watching, I think they went to commercial break, and then the commercial break lasted like 25 minutes.
Oh yeah, they had all. And what's so crazy to think is those guys, whoever, the commentators, Nick Reynolds and Glenn Jarrett,
I think.
So they were probably in a. I would love to know this on a production perspective. Yeah. They were most likely in a TV truck calling the race off of a TV monitor in the pits. Because there was one time in that race where they're like, and that's a halfway. And then they go to commercial and they come back and they're racing. And then 5 laps later, and now this is the halfway because we screwed up. We couldn't see the scoreboard. So, yeah, it's just crazy stuff. Great stories. Amazing that we were fortunate enough to
witness it.
My dad, unfortunately, wasn't there because he was working the Goodyear tire. They had I think there was a West race, or no, there was a Southwest Tour race somewhere. And
you mentioned that Ralph Shaheen, by the way, was part of that broadcast.
He was.
Right?
He was the pit reporter. He had the little
hey,
we could get Ralph, I guess.
Podcast idea.
Yeah, he had his little scale to show you how flat the track was.
Yes.
Yeah, his level. Yeah. Someone mentioned that in the thread as well. Great. I thought this was a great episode. I feel like we're actually getting better at these things. Meaning, this podcast is kicking ass, I feel like.
I think so. I'm starting to promote it more now, but I wanted to make sure we had some more in the bank before we really started telling people that we have this thing. But this one was one of those.
It's fun for me, at least, I should say. Yeah. I don't know about the listeners. It's fun. It's fun for me to listen to.
Well, as long as they download it. But no, just no. But this one was one of those. I had this date circled for a long time to have this chat, and I'm glad we did it.
Yeah.
So,
Pretty cool. And I didn't realize until today that Sedgwick finished third in that race.
Yeah, I didn't know where he finished. I remember Hornaday not finishing as high as we thought he would, because he was one of the favorites too.
And I remember Skinner having an upset, but I don't remember much other than Schrader winning.
Yeah.
So
his only win in the Truck Series. So
wow, look at him. See another stat.
So, but well, I think that's it, guys.
Let's go iRacing.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for coming on, guys. And if you listeners out there actually hung with us for the 2 hours or so that we've been chatting, thanks for hanging in there. I hope that a lot of the people listening were Saugus Speedway fans, attendees, racers. I hope that you guys enjoyed it, because it's definitely a track that is missed by pretty much anybody who grew up in Southern California area. I tell Tommy and Jeffrey all the time, like, I would tell my dad, like, after, like, we were living like 15 minutes away from this track the whole time, and like we only went once. And I thought for me that was kind of a shame, because it's like, like you guys have been holding out this whole time. But it was a big loss when the track went away. Luckily Irwindale was made to fill that void. But as Bill said, you could try to make another track, but you can never really capture what made Saugus. And honestly, like, you guys, low budget TV, probably a lot of what makes you guys, that was sort of like formed at Saugus. I mean, that's where you guys grew up, and it eventually went to Mason Moran, then Irwindale, but it really started at Saugus for you guys too. So
just look at the Night of Destruction events that Tom and I got into, and you just have to look at our childhood to say, where the hell did they get this idea?
Right. We were influenced partly from Ray Wilkins. So. But all in a good way. Funny enough, we actually contacted Ray. But
we did, yeah.
No go. So we just had to settle with a guy who's been there and done that.
Yeah.
Named Bill. So.
Yeah. So. But well, that's all we got. So thanks for hanging in there, guys, and we'll catch you next time on the Racing Foolz podcast, powered by Low Budget TV and brought to you by Crown Performance. See ya. The Racing Foolz podcast is produced by TQ Media House in association with Low Budget TV. Special thanks goes out to Tommy and Jeffrey from Low Budget TV, Kelly McGuire for the free mic and mixer, and Ramon Ariola for helping create various show elements. Music is provided by RFM, royalty-free music in the YouTube audio library. If you like what you hear, give Low Budget TV a follow on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and let us know what you think. We welcome all questions, comments, and ideas, and who knows, maybe your idea will be the next topic on the Racing Foolz podcast.